Polly, the first thing everyone would always say was, "Cool, so you can build my house one day?" While this was flattering, it skewed my assumption of architecture. I thought I would get to school and start building models of houses because that's a traditional image. However, I started by building these models, which seem unrelated to architecture. However, I soon learned that there was much more to the field. While I knew this program was difficult, I didn't know that I would be pushed to my limits mentally and physically with countless all-nighters and mental breakdowns at 5 a.m. It has taught me invaluable lessons about myself and the world around me, though. I would like to tell you about the foundation, complexity, and impact of architecture. The foundation is about the essence and base knowledge of the field. The complexity is about the careful details and methodical practices, and the impact is about why this information should matter to any of us. Learning about these three elements has increased my appreciation and acknowledgement of the field, and I hope I can do the same for you. There are many different theories that define the basis of architecture. As a student, understanding these different perspectives and fundamental principles has been vital for my education. I would like to share some of those with you. In the article, What is Architecture About? By Parman, written 2000, there's a quote by Jan Henriksen, a professor of architecture at the Royal Institute of Technology. He says that architecture is not about building buildings. While this is strange, it is true. There's much more to the field. There's a deep philosophical complexity, and architecture lies between the fine line of art and science, in chaos and order. There's no right or wrong answer to architecture. Me and my peers used to ask in class, is this good or is this right? But our professors would always say there's no good or right in architecture because it's subjective. In the article Kant and the Philosophy of Architecture, written by Paul Guyer in 2011, he says that architecture is not an easily defined term. It is an abstract concept that is interpreted differently by everyone. This is because art means different things to different peoples, and the people interpret it based on their experiences. In the article Assessment, Focus, and Studio by Barbara de la Harpe, written in 2009, she says that architecture programs must involve a holistic education. This means they must include product, process, and person. The product is about the final outcome of a project. The process is about the methods and evolution of a project. This is why sketches and study models are important to show in our portfolios. They show development and improvement. Architecture programs must also assess the person. This is about the unique attributes of the artist. Students must be able to show personal expression, originality, and critical thinking. This is why the end goal of an architecture program is a holistic education rather than just a bunch of designed objects. Now that you have a better understanding of the essence of architecture, I would like to tell you about some of the logistics of the field. The daily life of an architect is not as glamorous as you might think. People assume that they sit around drawing and building models all day, but there's many more mundane tasks, such as paperwork and making payments, and complex and intricate tasks, such as finalizing construction details and making sure everything is up to code. I once visited a firm that had an entire bookshelf of building codes for California that the architects must be aware of so their buildings are safe. While it's difficult to correctly summarize the task of architects, the article, The Process of Architecture by Building LLC, written in 2008, does a pretty good job of this. They divide up the tasks into information collection, design, and construction. During information collection, the architect talks to the client and has meetings and discussions to figure out the needs and desires of the client. They also gather information about the context of a site, such as climate, location, and surrounding areas, because this affects the design of a building. The next phase is design. This is where the creativity happens. It's where the architect comes up with a general concept for a building. During construction, an architecture firm must acquire the appropriate permits and create construction documents that lay out the specific plans for a building. During my time at Cal Poly, we've had one project that tried to imitate this complex nature. We started with information collection, where we did different diagrams about the site. We then designed our project and then constructed it. While this was a simplified version of the extensive process, it gave us a taste of the real-world application. You may think some of this information is interesting, or you may not care at all. But architecture has a bigger influence on all of our lives than you might think. In the article, Architecture, Life, and Habit by Andrew Ballantyne, written in 2011, architecture affects us in ways we're unaware of. It lives in the background of our lives and dictates how we live. In architecture magazines, architecture often stands alone, without any people, kind of just like an art form. However, this is not realistic, because buildings are always inhabited by people. Architecture must also consider the well-being of people because it affects our moods and sets the tone for our life. As you can imagine, if you lived in each of these houses for like a month, your mood between those 2 months would be pretty different based on the architecture design. On the article, Being Moved by Architecture by Jennifer Robinson, written in 2012, she explains how architecture is a multi-sensory experience. As you move through a building, you experience it, not just how it looks, but how it sounds, feels, and maybe even tastes. You must appreciate architecture through your different senses. That's why you don't just see a building, but you are occupied in it. There's also a broader way to look at the effect of architecture. This has to do with the cultural impact. In the article, The Architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright, written by Gail Sattler in 1999, she talks about the ideas of the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. He says that he believes in the importance of maintaining diverse philosophies and ideas to create relevant design. Architecture must be aware of its context in order to respond to social and economic issues. This is why Wright worked to make his work incorporate parts of the surrounding culture. This awareness for context and human influence is what makes great architecture. When I began studying this field this year, I thought it was obscure and had limited opportunities and applications. On the contrary, architecture is constantly all around us. It is a way of looking at life as well as a means to survive. Now that you are aware of the fundamentals, intricacy, and influence of architecture, I hope you have a greater appreciation and understanding for the built world around you.